afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Star Cub Review. Today, I am gonna bring you another one of, well, it's actually gonna be part 2 for recommendations for Australian TV shows. Now, part 1, I'll flash up on the screen for you. That's part 1 done. Check it out, people. This is I'm doing it in parts, so part 1, this is part 2, and I'll possibly have a 3 and 4. It just depends how much I really want to cover with the Australian Aussie shows. There's a lot to cover because there's a lot that I watched in my childhood that I feel like really needs to be spoken about. And before we get into that, for everyone brand new to the channel, thank you so much for clicking on this video or seeing any of my other videos. Don't forget to click like, subscribe, and the notification bell to keep up to date with all my content, if you like. And for all those returning, thank you so much, guys. I know I say it too often, but I really, really appreciate it. Let's grow my channel even further. And without further ado, let's get into it. Now, one that I feel like should have a mention, because this one is from 1993 and ran till 1994, and it's very quirky, but at the heart of it, it's Australian, but it really does show you how Australian kids grew up, how they adapt to, you know, life, whether it be life at the outback, life in the city, ocean, you name it. This one is called Ship to Shore, and it was actually filmed off the coast of where I come from, Perth, Western Australia. It was filmed off the coast of Western Australia, called Circle Island. And the kids there, the kids in this show just have these really wacky, bizarre adventures, and it's typical kids come up with things to, growing up, you come up with ideas to play like sword fighting and, guns and all of that. And this really does, it does a lot of adventures where you could go adventuring in caves and there's a sea monster or a cave monster. It had really, really funny, quirky stories in it. And it's just about, generally, it's about the kids that live on Circle Island and just have these wacky, crazy adventures. Another one I recommend, which and the creators of Ship to Shore were Glenda Hambley and John Rapsey. And it stars Clinton Voss, Kimberly Stark, Greg Carroll, among a whole bunch of other cast members, which, if you need to check it out, people, go and check it out. I highly recommend it because I grew up with this growing up. Another one I highly recommend is, this one is quirky. This one has really quirky, crazy storylines involving all sorts of wacky inventions, creatures, wacky storylines in general. It's called Around the Twist, and that's another one from the 90s that really struck a chord with me, and it has a really catchy tune. So I will flash that catchy tune, just the start of it, just a little bit of the opening, as I don't want my video to be flagged for copyright, but this is the theme song, just a little bit of it. I'll flash it up on the video for you now. And yeah, you can get the gist of that. I will record the full opening of Around the Twist, and I will stick it in the, well, actually, no, I won't, because I might get flagged. But just go and check it out. You can YouTube the opening on YouTube. Just go and yeah. It's wacky, it's creative. It's another one that's set in Australia, it's wacky. Just go with it, people. Another one, which is a kids, well, this one's little kiddies per se, but this is another one that resonates with a lot of Australians, majority of the Australians, and that is Blinky Bill, which is the kids animated cartoon, and it's, as you expect, it's about Blinky Bill, the koala, and it just features a lot of fun and fantastic characters. Really, you would find in the Australian bush, but that was another one that I quite liked. Even now, at my age, 37, I mean, I still enjoy Blinky Bill. It brings back a lot of childhood memories for me. A lot of this brings back childhood memories. Another one that I watched religiously every day after school when I got home was a TV program that involved the Australian outback, vets, carers, rangers, and I remember because she was my favourite on the show, Ranger Stacey, and everyone back home should know who I'm talking about, Ranger Stacey. Yep, you named it. The TV show is Totally Wild, and I will flash up the logo for you. That's the logo when it started in, I think it started in the 90s, early 90s. I remember when I was, every day after school, I would religiously watch Totally Wild from 4 to 4:30 or 4 to 4:45 p.m. in the afternoon. I absolutely love Totally Wild. It's very educational. I just remember Ranger Stacey holding snakes, wallabies, bilbies, all sorts of exotic birds, snakes, reptiles, and it's a very educational program in which it teaches Australians and Australian kids what's dangerous, what's not dangerous, what you should avoid when going into the bush, what happens if you get bitten by a snake. It has all of that, and Totally Wild was very, very, very informative. It was well done. It was presented really well. The rangers on this show, and Ranger Stacey, of course, were all really, really thorough with how you handle certain animals, what you should do if you ever, come across a deadly snake or a deadly spider and stuff like that. So it educated a lot of people, and it was a really, really fun show that I watched for so many years growing up after school, watching it, and I loved the old Totally Wild. The new Totally Wild after the 90s kind of was a little bit soured, in my opinion, but I forever have those memories of Totally Wild back in the day. After school, totally in tune with animals. Always have been. I'm a bush freak. Love handling spiders and snakes. So, and my mum hates spiders and I love spiders. And, I have my dad to thank for that because he loves animals as well. And he taught myself and my brother to handle spiders correctly, handle lizards correctly, what to do. We'd go camping and stuff like that. So I really had to thank my dad for that. Growing up, going camping out in the bush, handling all sorts of animals and insects and spiders and all of that, and having scorpions as pets and spiders and centipedes. I had an amazing childhood, I tell ya. I had an amazing childhood, and that's the sort of stuff this show really taught myself and my dad as well, and a lot of Australian kids, how to really appreciate the Australian bush and zoos and what the zookeepers and all of that do for animals as well. So check it out, people. I have another one which is from the 80s. I don't remember too much about. I remember it, and I remember one of the most iconic characters, and this is one of the most iconic TV shows, or one of the iconic TV shows from the 80s, and that's Acropolis Now, with the main character. Let me just bring it up. So, Acropolis Now was from 1989, and it was on Channel 9, and it's set in Melbourne. It's a sitcom from 1989 about a fictional Greek calf called the Acropolis Calf. It's located in Melbourne, ran for 63 episodes, broadcast from the 9th of August 1989 to the 4th of November 1992 on Network 7. And it was created by Nick Giannopoulos, George Kapaneris, and Simon Palomares, who also starred in the series. And one of the main characters in it, one of the most iconic characters is... Let me pick it up. Effie. She's one of the most iconic characters in it. One of the most iconic characters was Effie. Big hair. Yeah, because Effie was played by Mary Custis, and she had the typical perm, and she was Jim's, which is Nick Giannopoulos' character. That's his cousin, and she's a hairdresser, Effie, and it's a really, really funny. It's just a really funny sitcom. Really, really funny. I can't say this enough. Effie is one of the biggest standouts in it. Mary Custis, who played Effie, is really funny. Really, really funny. And it ran for 5 seasons. Excuse me. But you need to check it out, people, because Acropolis Now was one of those shows that really stood the test of time for Australian sitcoms. It was funny, it was brilliant, the jokes were funny, although some things now would be so bloody PC. But there's Nick Giannopoulos in it. He also went on to... He played one of the most iconic characters in Wog Boy, which is an Australian movie, but he created a character for that. And basically, Acropolis Now is about, this is PC now, but they were referred to back then as WOGs. And everyone from Australia will understand how we approach things and stuff like that, and just how it is, as Poms as well. But with everything being so PC now, this show probably would not be made today, or even a reboot, without having some of that stuff cut, because some of it now, so many people are PC about things. It's just bloody ridiculous, and that's just the way Australians were. We were like that. We're like, Wog Boy, and that's just what they were called. They were called Wogs. Greek people were called Wogs, and the show really is. It's very funny. Trust me, people. It's very, very funny. Another Australian one, which there's two, and there's some of the longest running soaps in Australia, and the first one is Home and Away, which started all the way in the 80s and has continued on to the 90s and the 2000s. And Home and Away, for a lot of people growing up in Australia, that was one of their major go-tos, was Home and Away. Home and Away for me is a big part of my life. It was something I used to watch all the time at 7 o'clock at night with my mum and my stepdad, or when I went to stay with my dad, it would be my dad and my stepmom. We'd watch Home and Away, but majority of it was my mum and my stepdad. My stepdad didn't like Home and Away, couldn't stand Home and Away, but my mum, I always remember watching it with my mum, and the storylines covered a lot of taboo topics that were brought up in the 80s and were even brought up in the 90s and 2000s. So it touches on LGBTQ, it touches on rape, it touches on drugs, it touches on alcohol, it touches on smoking, it touches on teenagers growing up, teenagers with PMS, teenagers that have mental issues. Even some of the older characters would have issues like stealing and lying and, marital issues. So it covered a lot, like a lot of friggin' soaps do these days. Running through the sands of the hourglass. These are the days of our lives, like Days of Our Lives. It's very sappy drama. Home and Away is a staple. Another one that has been a long-running Australian drama soap is Neighbours, which started in the 80s. Now, if no one is aware, and I'm pretty sure everyone be aware, especially in Australia, but for anyone that lives in America that isn't aware, we have two major stars that were, well, three actually, but two that were in, one was in one show and the other was in the other. Kylie Minogue was in Home and Away. So she was on Home and Away, and her sister, Danny Minogue, was on Neighbours. And Kylie Minogue's friend and also ex, Jason Donovan, was on Home and Away. So yeah, that's 3 stars out from there. But Home and Away and Neighbours had a lot of guest stars that were famous, and you wouldn't recognize it at the time, but they went on to be big international stars. So there's those two, Home and Away and Neighbours. Neighbours is another one. It's very sappy. It covered a lot of issues, but it also did a lot of things that Home and Away didn't cover back then in the 90s, whereas Home and Away did. But Home and Away covered a lot of other things another way that you could basically define the two shows apart from each other, because they had totally different characters, totally set in different places, but the amount of drama that was surrounding it was hilarious. That's just what a lot of Australian drama and all that was about. Those TV shows was the SPAC attacks and the fights. It was funny. It was funny, but also covered a lot of serious issues that today really does resonate with a lot of people. Like, you can really relate to some of these characters, what they're going through and stuff, but also, it covered how kids grew up in schools and how our school system works and how police systems work and all of that, where it's very, very different to how Americans how their policing system is, which I just find absolutely ridiculous. You know, so it really, Australian drama shows really hone in a lot on how all of our systems work, how life is in Australia, pretty much. And with any show, there's another show I remember that we grew up with, watched every day after school from, I think it was 5 to 5:15 or 5:20, and that was I call it the feral. I call it the feral Jim Henson puppets, but it's not actually Jim Henson at all. And that show was called The Ferals, and it was puppeteer. It was about puppets, but I remember it was called The Ferals, and I will flash up the intro for The Ferals for you all to see up here. Whether it's over here or over there, I'll figure that out. But this is The Ferals, and The Ferals was a very interesting show. It was funny. It was very, very funny. And it just goes to show you our humour. You know, a lot of people say, you know, Australians aren't funny, blah, blah, blah. We can't take their humour. You have to honestly be Australian. And I say this to all my family and friends that know and understand, because we come from Australia, is that our humour, a lot of people can't take Australian humour. And honestly, our humour's freaking funny. And even, I would say, rivals American humour. But when, you know, it's so strange when an American comes up to me and goes, oh, is that true? You know, do you all have such deadly animals in Australia? Like, is it full of poisonous snakes and spiders? Yes. Australia is full of poisonous spiders and drop bears and marsupials and rats and snakes and spiders the size of dinner plates. They're all gonna kill you. No, Australia isn't all about, you know, dangerous animals. Yes, we have some of the world's deadliest spiders and snakes, and that's honest. I'm damn truth. That is honest to God. We do have some of the most dangerous snakes and spiders, but it's the whole of Australia isn't deadly, and a drop bear is not, you know. Koala is not going to drop out of a tree and attack you and kill you and rip your guts out. No. Completely the opposite, actually. They are very, very cute and cuddly. Just like an echidna is not going to, you know, suddenly roll up into a ball like a critter from Critters and shoot little spurs at you or shoot its spines at you. No. An echidna is a very cute little animal that wouldn't hurt a fly. And, you know, the snakes and that, yes, I've gone for bushwalks over the years and stuff like that, and you tend to come across some snakes, but it's very, when you do come across them, they tend to be more frightened of you than you are of them, and they scurry off. It's so bizarre to me to think that a lot of people don't understand Australian humour, and I think to myself, our humour's really funny. Like, it really is. Watch some of our comedy shows. They're really funny. But I've let this go on for a little bit too long. 24 minutes into it now. But this is part 2. This is some of the shows that I highly recommend. I will probably do a part 3 and a part 4, but thank you all so much for tuning into this one. Now, I know it's been a long one, but honestly, I like doing this. I like talking about it, even if I do ramble on a little bit and gibberish comes out of my mouth. But hey, it's very refreshing to do this sort of stuff and talk about it, because it honestly helps me connect with people more, being quirky and out there. And, you know, I'm a typical Aussie bear that really, when it comes down to it, you know, missing family and friends back home and not being there for certain events and stuff like that really does, you know, put a strain on my heart every now and then, and makes me think I really just want to pack it all in and go back home because I miss my family and my friends terribly. But I know my husband wouldn't want me to do that, and I'm not going to do that. But we are next year going back home for a visit, so I'll be introducing him to a lot of Australian dishes and treats and that back home, but also the lovely beaches, scenery, spots to see around in Perth, in Rockingham. Big shout out to all my very, very close friends in Rockingham, Western Australia. I will be seeing you all very, very soon, trust me. And to my family, we're coming. And when we do, we'll have to throw typical Australian party. Because, yeah, I haven't seen some of my family for a number of years, and it's just really strange. But I really want to introduce my husband to a lot of what we do in Australia, and how everything is different in Australia as compared to America. So it's going to be very, very interesting. But other than that, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. And like I said in my previous video, I will be having some of the other videos premiering over the next couple of days. So keep an eye out for those, and I will see you all in the next video. All right, guys, take it easy. Ciao.